There are legitimate reasons for fans and pundits to have expectations when it comes to games, especially in Week 1. When teams don't deliver, the hurt, the guilt, and the shame is real and dumped onto their teams. Here are teams that didn't live up to expectations and should be ashamed of themselves after Week 1. First up, the team that scored the fewest points in 60 minutes of football, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. There is no team in the NFL that should feel more ashamed and embarrassed by their performance than the Dallas Cowboys. They were at home on primetime television Sunday night and could only muster up 3 points. With all the hype surrounding their offense and all the praise being thrusted onto their defense, the Cowboys lost in double digits to a 45-year-old quarterback. Here are some numbers to prove how dreadful they were. They only had 12 first downs to their opponent's 18. They only managed to convert 3 third down situations out of 15. They had 103 fewer yards than their opponent and yet somehow had 2 more plays than them. The Cowboys did nothing with the ball and were boring to watch. This was supposed to be an exciting team that flew around the field and clawed and dived and fought for every yard, but they didn't do that. They didn't do squat when they were playing at home. They let the fans down, the city down, and to make matters even worse, any hopes for a Super Bowl run were destroyed when their quarterback, Dak Prescott, left the field with a little over 5 minutes to go in the game. So do take the time to check out our video where we break down the potential collapse of the Dallas Cowboys' entire season. But for now, it is important to highlight that the Dallas Cowboys should be ashamed of themselves in Week 1 and owe their fans a major apology. So sticking with the theme of home teams owing their fans apologies, the Arizona Cardinals should feel ashamed of themselves for their showing at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no shame in losing to a superior team, especially one that has an MVP caliber player in Patrick Mahomes, but it was the way the Arizona Cardinals collapsed without a major fight that caught the anger and dismay of their loyal fans. It was 23-7 for the Chiefs at the half, and that increased to 37-7 by the end of the third quarter. It's one thing to lose, but to be smacked around like a defenseless victim is just painful to watch, and even more so for the players to absorb. The Cardinals' defense were torched by Mahomes. The Chiefs' quarterback completed passes to 9 different receivers, 8 of which posted double digits in yardage. The Kansas City Chiefs had 206 more offensive yards than the home team Cardinals. Now that is completely unacceptable if you are the home team. This is your house and you are supposed to defend it even against the best in the business. But the Cardinals didn't, and while they did score at the end, the game was already over. As a fan watching the game, you sort of felt like the Chiefs took pity on the Cardinals and allowed them to get a couple touchdowns just to save face. But really, when it was all said and done in Week 1, the Arizona Cardinals owe their fans an apology for that wretched display and should feel ashamed of themselves. Another home team that really knows how to torture and torment their fan base is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, while I can understand that facing a tough divisional rival such as the Pittsburgh Steelers isn't as shameful as losing to a weaker team, but it is. There's no room for sympathy, empathy, or anything like that when your team is up against a team that you hate and they hate you just as much. There's only place for wanting to dominate, or at the very least, win the game. When the Cincinnati Bengals hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 1, it was a total carnage. The Bengals gave up a total of 5 turnovers, were being bullied all over the field, and trailed for most of the game. I say for most of the game because they did manage to tie it at the very end and were 1 extra point kick away from victory with 2 seconds left. If successful, it would have clinched victory over a bitter rival. Up stepped a reliable kicker, and his attempt was blocked, which sent the game to overtime. Should the kicker for the Bengals feel shame? Absolutely. But not all was lost. There was more football to be played, and the Bengals were on the front foot and in good position to win the game again with a field goal from 29 yards out. A chip shot for most kickers in the NFL. But once again, they missed it badly. It was incredibly disheartening and demoralizing and depressing because the Steelers went on to win the game. Now, there's no shame in losing a close game, but it should have never been close had quarterback for the Bengals, Joe Burrow, not thrown 4 interceptions. This is the same team that reached the AFC Championship game, and on opening day on their home turf, they failed to win the game on 2 separate occasions. The entire team should just look in the mirror and feel the guilt after that loss. The Bengals should feel ashamed of themselves. Now, there are more teams who failed to win at home, like the Tennessee Titans, who were dominating the game against the New York Giants, only to lose it after a field goal miss with seconds left in the game. The Titans were so dominant that they were leading 13-0 at halftime. but something happened to them at halftime, or maybe something took hold of the New York Giants. Either way, the Titans blew a 13-point lead at home against a team who don't trust their quarterback, Daniel Jones, and who also has a weak defensive unit. These are the types of teams that should be beaten if you are coached by one of the best in the business in Mike Vrabel, one of the best running backs in the NFL in Derrick Henry, and a solid quarterback who has been with the team in Ryan Tannehill. There's really no reason why the Titans were expected to lose this game, and they only have themselves to blame. They didn't show up in the second half, arguably the portion that matters the most in football. They underestimated their opponents, they were slightly cocky and full of themselves, and paid the price. The Titans owe their fans a humongous apology for losing this game, and they should feel extremely ashamed of themselves. And yet another home team with a high expectation and high hopes entering Week 1, only to lose to an inferior opponent on paper. I am, of course, referencing the Baker Mayfield Carolina Panthers, who lost to the Cleveland Browns, formerly known as the Baker Mayfield Cleveland Browns. That's right, Baker Mayfield was traded from the Browns to the Panthers, and the game was in Carolina, so this should be Baker's house, only it wasn't, as the Browns had 355 total yards, of which 217 were on the ground to the Panthers' 261, of which 207 of them were through the air. One team was running the ball because they didn't trust Jacoby Brissett, the backup quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, and the other team was passing because they had a shiny new quarterback, except it was the same old Baker Mayfield. Mayfield had a pass completion percentage of 59.3 and threw for 1 touchdown and had 1 interception. Not the hottest numbers offensively for this Carolina team, as their star running back only had 33 yards after 10 carries. The numbers don't lie, as the final score was a 2-point loss for the Panthers on a final kick from a team in the Cleveland Browns that everyone is expecting to beat because they don't have their starting quarterback, who is serving a lengthy suspension. At home with an allegedly good defense, a good quarterback, a great running back, facing a team that has no real quarterback and only a run game. So it's clear that the Carolina Panthers should feel ashamed of themselves for losing in what was considered a sure win. Other notable teams that should feel ashamed of themselves are the Indianapolis Colts, who tied their game on the road against a weaker divisional rival in the Houston Texans. There is no excuse since they have one of the best running backs in Jonathan Taylor, a great receiver in Michael Pittman Jr., and a veteran quarterback in Mike Ryan. But they didn't win, so they should feel somewhat ashamed. And the final one, the Green Bay Packers, only putting up 7 points in a divisional game against bitter rivals, the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Rodgers and that organization should definitely feel shame, not just for losing, but losing the way they did. So which team do you think should feel the most ashamed after Week 1? Please let us know in the comments below. But before you go and you still want to watch some awesome NFL content like this, please watch the next video that pops up on your screen.